From there, and SBOM isn't beneficial to you, as I said before, if it's kind of just sitting in a Google Drive file somewhere. So you do have to import these SBOMs in some way, shape, or form. And so FOSSA supports SBOM import today. And as I said, we'll continue to kind of beef up that capability. If you decide to roll your own tooling, that's fine as well. I just think the most important thing to consider is making sure that you're ingesting both your first-party SBOMs, if those are generated outside of your SCA tooling in another part of your organization, but then also starting to reach the point where you're demanding these things from your suppliers and vendors, so that way you can have an understanding of your third-party SBOMs. And putting those in the same place is extremely important. So that way, when you have that, next zero-day vulnerability or some other event, you can quickly query that across your organization. I think the real important part that I do want to call out as we think about ingesting SBOMs is, think of this as augmenting your SCA kind of vulnerability management program and not replacing. And then primarily being is because it's actually, it's typically always going to be more accurate if you could have 100% coverage with a particular SCA tool. So that way you're actually constantly scanning at both build, source, and runtime versus only having a kind of that point in time SBOM. Now, granted, perfect worlds don't exist, and I understand that integration problem, in particular, large enterprise is massive and difficult to work through, and so you have to take the information that you have available to you, and so I think that is where it becomes information that you can use to enrich gaps that you have in your SCA tooling, but maybe don't necessarily think about fully replacing it from that regard. Kind of talked about before, make sure you have cycling-nest, XPDX, required Perl, VEX, and then CPE for any environments that Perl isn't supported. Use some additional sources as well. Starting with CVEs are great as you start to think about things like EPSS, which is the exploit protectability system. This is built by First Org, is fully supported within FOSSA. This then attempts to quantify the probability of a particular vulnerability being exploited, versus CVE is much more on the possibility of that particular vulnerability being exploited. As well as, CISA-known exploits being a great mechanism, because this is actually proven exploits known in the wild, such as, Log4j and some of those other big things. Do try to avoid manually looking up vulnerabilities. I think that is also I think that is also just like a difficult practice, if you will, as you think about the level of the amount of sheer CVEs that you'll be kind of consuming. And then lastly, just make sure you have a one-to-one mapping between your SBOM and a full application release, making sure that you're having per revision consumption of those SBOMs each time that you do a new version bump or make any changes to that code base.